After we determine what the fuel pressure is, right about 55 pounds. So when we do the service, we're going to run it up to about 45 pounds. So we can shut the vehicle off. Next thing what we need to do, we need to disable the fuel pump. There's several ways we can do that. We can either pull the fuse, pull the relay, pull the electrical disconnect to the pump, or on this vehicle, Fords, they have an inertia switch. On Fords, the inertia switch is located in several different spots. It's either located on the passenger side floorboard, or it's located in the trunk. So this is a truck, so we're gonna go disable the fuel pump. There's a little button up in there. You can feel that the button popped up. That tells me that the fuel pump's disabled. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and hook air to the tool. Before we hook air to the tool, I want to make sure my regulator's turned all the way down, make sure my cap's on good, and I want to make sure my vent's closed. As we can see, we've still got pressure on our bottom gauge. That's good. We want to look at that because if the pressure would have dropped back to zero while we were waiting, while we were hooking the tool up, if it would have dropped back to zero, that tells us we got a problem with the fuel system. It could either be the fuel regulator, it could be a drippy injector, or on the feed line, going back to the tank, there's a check valve. It tells me that that check valve could be the problem. If we try to do the service with one of them, well, with the check valve being bad and the regulator being bad, basically what's going to happen is our product's going to go back to the tank, and we're not going to be able to perform the service. So we've got to fix that problem before we can clean the injectors. But since we're holding pressure, everything looks good. What I'm going to do, I'm going to run my tool up to 45 pounds. I'm about 50, so I'm going to run it up to in between 40 to 45 pounds. One thing I want to do before we start the vehicle, before I open my bottom ball valve, what I want to do is I want to take the fuel cap off of the gas tank. The reason I want to do that is if during the service for some reason a regulator fails, or that check ball or that check valve in the feed line that I was talking about fails, and what's going to happen, since we've got air pressure here, it's just going to start pumping air and product. It's going to push our product and just keep pumping air and air and air to the fuel tank. If the fuel tank is sealed, if we got the cap on it, it could balloon the tank out and basically cause us more problems than what we're trying to fix. So I'm going to open the gas tank right now. Normally this is a good time to put your 44K in the tank. Okay, we got our tool hooked up to the fuel rail, got our product in the tool, got air hooked up, our regulators turned up to where we want it. I'm going to go ahead and open the ball valve. I'm going to start the vehicle. Want to check, make sure we don't have any leaks. Make sure we want to read the bottom gauge. The bottom gauge is what's actually the actual pressure that's on the fuel rail. So we want to watch the gauge. Now if this gauge is a lot lower than the top gauge, there's a screen up here in this tool. That screen, after a while using funnels to fill the tool or getting dirt in there, that screen will start getting plugged up. And that's the reason why we want to go off the bottom gauge, because that could be reading lower than what we're reading here. What we do now, we just let the vehicle run till it till it dies, till it runs out of product. While we're waiting for this to do the service, I'm going to step over here and show you a system that doesn't have a Schrader valve. If the system does not have a Schrader valve, then what we need to do, we need to find the feed and the return line, and we need to once again, we need to do something with the fuel pump. We need to disconnect the fuel pump, we need to pull the regulator, the fuse, the inertia switch, whatever, or we just take the feed and the return and loop it like we've done here. So then we don't have to worry about disabling the pump, because while we're doing the service, the fuel is just going to come up the feed line, go through the loop, just go back to the tank. Not going to cause us any problems. This is the return line. We can tell the difference between the two because of the size. Feed line's larger than the return. What we've done, we basically capped off the return side, and we've put a fitting on the feed side. So we go through the same process we went over there. We'd put our tool, we'd hook our tool right here, our supply tool, 9210. Then we'd run the pressure up. What we need to do is figure out what the fuel pressure on this vehicle's, what it runs at. Be whatever the manufacturer sets the fuel pressure at. That's what we want to set our tool at. Just hook it up, open the ball valve, and let it go. Since we've got the return line plugged off, we know, and we got the feed line off, we know that the product's not going to go back to the tank. So it's not as sensitive as it is over here going through the Schrader valve. While we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and put the 44K in the tank. We got the 44K in the tank. We want to make sure we tell the customer to fill the tank up. 44K works on a full tank of gas. We're going to watch our engine. We're going to keep an eye on it. As soon as we start running rough, we're just going to go ahead and shut the vehicle off. The reason that is when the vehicle starts running rough, we have a possibility of setting some misfire codes. So instead of setting the misfire codes, we just go ahead and turn it off. Now, if we're away from the vehicle and it runs out of product, it's just like the vehicle running out of gas. I mean, it's not going to really cause any major issues. Until the engine's about to run out of product, I'm going to go ahead and shut the vehicle off. I'm going to release the pressure from our tool. Turn my regulator all the way down. I still got pressure on the bottom side in the tank. I'm going to leave my ball valve open. That way I relieve the pressure all the way to the fuel rail. That way when I take my fitting off the fuel rail, I'm not spraying fuel all over the place. We're down to 0. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect from the vehicle. Shut off my ball valve. Fitting off the vehicle. I'm going to turn the fuel pump back on. I'm going to start the vehicle.